She admitted it in that text message to Rosalio that she was trying to establish a paper trail to take my brother to family court. It was very clear.
All right, I'm doing something a little bit different today. I'm joined by Solomon Anderson. And Solomon, great guy, great to meet you. I'm sorry this is a very sober subject, though, so I don't want to come in with too much levity. I kind of want you to help me understand, as somebody who is not familiar with the case other than the broad strokes that he was convicted, and that there's a large amount of controversy, especially amongst the law tubers, that the conviction was odd to them. All right. Well, let's go back. I hate to say to the beginning, but at least the beginning of their relationship. When did you first get to know Sadie Beecham, and when was she introduced to your family? How was all that?
Oh man, I honestly am not sure that I remember the very first time that I met her. One of the first times that I met her, for sure. Um, I was at a tavern in Port Washington, Wisconsin, where we had gone out for some drinks, and a childhood friend of mine was tending bar, and that was an interesting night. Ended up breaking up a bar fight and stuff, but yeah, a guy tried to tackle me, and I ended up tossing him out the back door of the bar. So, uh, and that's very vividly why I remember that being my first meeting of her, one of the first meetings of her. And it had to have been pretty early on in their relationship. I think I was maybe 21 or 22, something like that. I was pretty young. So that was, oh man, that's 17 years ago, 16 years ago, something like that. Maybe I was 23, but it was
Was
a while ago.
was Zachariah, now is it Zachariah or Zach?
I mean, he's always been Zach to our family. His full name
Okay,
is Zachariah, so in all the headlines, it's Zachariah. So very
sure.
specifically to try and differentiate between all other Zachs that exist, we're
Mhm.
using his full name in our like hashtag free Zachariah Anderson and things like that.
Okay, but for if I reference him, I want to be careful of people's names, and
Yeah,
people like to be addressed a certain way. Like Jonathan may prefer Jonathan and not John, so I try to be
yeah,
respectful.
yeah. No,
So was
Zach's fine.
okay, was Zach with you at the time?
Uh, at, in that bar fight, yeah, he was there. Yeah. Yeah, he was there, and he helped finish the bar fight. He definitely stood in the way and shut it down.
Hmm.
There was a guy that was upset because I had looked at his girlfriend or something like that in the bar, and then chaos ensued. So it was just stupid kids in youth trying to peacock in a bar.
He's your older brother, right?
He is by 4 years,
Okay.
3 3/4 years or whatever it is. But his birthday's in July, mine's in March. So when he turns, his next birthday, he'll be 4 years older than me.
So he was kind of protecting you, looking out for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so now,
Yeah, per as usual for our childhood.
oh,
Whether it was mischief or otherwise that we got into, he still always looked out for me. As because my dad was a single father for so many years during our childhood, my older two brothers looked out for me and for each other quite a bit. I mean, that doesn't mean that we didn't fight like dogs, but like boys do. We were kids, so uh, we grew up and had to tend each other and be there for each other. And in a lot of ways, Zach and Josh were both part of my personal parental unit, looking out for me and exposing me to the world. Probably before I should have been. As a kid and a teenager, but the reality was that overall an overwhelming good influence on my life, I think.
okay, so let's get into their relationship. Did they date for a long time and get married?
Yeah, not married, no,
Oh,
but
never
they
got
did,
married.
yeah, they dated for a really long time. I mean, they had, some rocky times in their relationship. I know that there were some issues. My brother traveled a lot. After a certain amount of time, he worked for AT&T for like 13 years, give or take. And he was like a local technician around the Milwaukee area, and then he took a position out on the west side of Wisconsin. He became a lineman. He would travel down to like Indiana and California and places like that, where they would run fiber optic lines. So he
Hmm.
would run telephone, fiber optics, high speed internet lines, and do a lot of they call it, like the machine is called the ditch witch, where they would bury
Yeah.
cable. So he would bury cable, or they would string line up mountainsides and do things like that in all kinds of weather and heat. So he got compensated fairly well to do that, and he used that money to then set aside for his family to support Sadie and their daughter, because they only had one child for most of their relationship, or over half of their relationship, three quarters or so. And then at some point he knocked her up again, and they found out that they had twin boys. So they have three children all together, resulting from two different pregnancies.
Okay. Now, are there any other children from any other group? That's all the
Nope,
children involved.
just
Okay.
all the children involved in their family unit.
Okay. So now the general outline that I've seen is that things were pretty much fine. I mean, I'm sure there was rocking, whatever, but their relationship was essentially solid till around 2019 or so.
Yeah, give or take. I mean, I had warned him almost 2 years prior to the 2019, fight, the breakup fight. I'm using quotes because he understood that they were on a break, that they were just taking space and not broken up. That was the communication that he had understood, and that was actually discussed during the trial, where she claims that she had absolutely cut it off with him. There's some evidence, I think, that actually supports my brother's view of it, that was presented in the trial, but I'll get into that in a little bit. There were some situations that had arisen in the like 1 to 2 years before that 2019 incident, that were red flags for me, and I had gone through my own custody dispute prior to that, and I told him, I said, this really, this is a situation where I think that she's setting up a paper trail to try and hang you for child support, and I would just be really careful, because it seems inflammatory intentionally, and he
Can
said,
you?
I know.
Okay, that's just kind of talking around it. Can you elaborate at all? Like
I don't want to
some
go into
example.
specific. I mean, I had spoken a little bit about how she had stolen like over $3,000, taken her best friend Rebecca to Arizona, had lied to him about it, and avoided that situation. He was really mad and broke some furniture over that situation. But
Stole from
um,
him?
yeah, she stole over $3,000 from him to take her best friend. And to be clear, her best friend Rebecca and Zach, they never really got along. They had a difference in viewpoint, and Rebecca was sort of a toxic element in Zach and Sadie's relationship. Rebecca would sort of would rub Zach the wrong way, was kind of dismissive, condescending, really rude to him, and issues like that. Zach had complained to me about it a number of times. That in this situation, it was like Sadie was choosing Rebecca over their relationship, and it was sort of an uncomfortable, exchange between them, and that was their drama to deal with, and I never really got in the middle of it. But Rebecca was never really polite to me either. So I can see why her general, I don't it,
Demeanor?
her demeanor, her dismissive behavior and stuff like that would rub him wrong. And if she was chirping in Sadie's ear, how that would just build tension in a relationship. But that was their relationship, and wasn't really my business to get in the middle of. And to be clear, there was that situation where she had stolen this money and lied to him, but she had told him that the money was going to be used for the twin boys, for their daycare expenses.
How did she
Um,
steal the money then? It sounds like he
well,
had
he
knowledge.
gave her the money to pay for the
Right.
boys' daycare expenses, and then she left for a trip to Arizona. Then the daycare called him asking for that money because it was a problem. So she had taken the money and then had treated her best friend to this trip and went and spent the money there instead of paying this bill that was what she told him it was for. So there was this level of dishonesty in their relationship that was, it smelled bad from an outsider's perspective. He was livid about it, and understandably. But then there was some issues with picking her up at the airport. She ghosted him, and he had all the kids in the minivan actually waiting for her to come out of the concourse at the terminal. She avoided him intentionally, getting her aunt to pick her up. Went home, refused to answer the phone, and there was like this back and forth. And actually, her aunt was a witness to all this and was really upset with Sadie about it too. And it was a major issue. And I mean, did my brother overreact? Yeah, he did in this situation. But
What happened exactly that would be the
I mean, they
overreaction?
got in an argument, and he threw the TV on the floor, and he broke like a roll top desk, and stuff like that. So I mean, he didn't lay hands on her, but he broke some furniture, and then he was I think he was she called the cops because he had broken some stuff, and he was like, I never touched her, and they were like, well, you can't break furniture either, and he was like, fair enough. But it was an issue, and I don't. I mean, everybody has ugly moments in their relationships, right, where
Mhm.
they don't behave like the way they should, and I think that by and large in this situation, I can't say that he expressed his anger or his irritation with the situation appropriately, but the reality was that he still did not lay hands on her. He still maintained control. He still, even though he was very angry about this, about the deception, the lies, the theft, that he still didn't go after her at all. And
But that
and
that
it,
would
it-
be her specifically, and
she
I'm
was
going to point something
her
out
deception.
that
Yeah.
right, right, right. But the issue that I can sort of see, and I don't want to over exaggerate, but we started off that one of your earliest memories of the pair of them was you were in a fight. So there was a physical, violent, and confrontation, and now
Well,
we're
somebody
into
came after her,
violent.
and he
Right.
said, "I'm sorry, you have a problem with the situation." And then the guy cocked a fist back, and there was a bar fight, right? So I mean, the reality was that like he didn't ensue violence. He didn't propagate violence
Mhm,
wherever he went. And there is a huge difference between Zach as a at that time, a 26-year-old person,
mhm,
and Zach as a 39-year-old person, 38-year-old person at that time. So 10 years of maturity and all kinds of things that had grown with him, and
mhm.
a lot of that being that he's not like a person that would escalate to ever laying his hands on a woman. He never laid his hands on a woman ever.
And I know I'm being devil's advocate here, and I apologize. I'm just trying to think in terms of it. Like, one, you guys have Old Testament names. I'm going to guess that you had a particular kind of upbringing, and in that upbringing, striking a female would probably be verboten.
Oh, absolutely. I had an alcoholic grandfather that was highly abusive, uh, and my dad was the one that had stepped in to intervene in those situations. And so my dad had raised us absolutely to not lay your hands on a woman. It was something that was very important, that he instilled in us, from a very early age, that he maintained.
The problem that comes in is this: she wasn't the one he's accused of killing. And I know
True.
that sounds bad, but
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that your upbringing may not have had the same condition when it came to males and fighting.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we fought as boys. I mean, of course. But I mean, Zach's also not a jealous man. So if she was going to go find other people, and I mean, those were also pieces of evidence presented in the case where
Mhm.
they even had a recording that they played where he said, you're supposed to be doing you and I'm doing me. What is this conversation?" And that's a reference to her dating other people and him dating other people because he was dating Christine. Like, yes, he admitted to feeling jealousy about the
Mhm.
situation, but that's not jealous controlled rage. That's not like, I need to control every aspect of your life. If that was the case, then how had he traveled for a great part of his career with AT&T, not been around to watch everything that she did?
Yeah, can we go into that? Because one thing that came out is that your brother was a stalker. I mean, I don't know a better way to put that, but there was supposedly evidence of stalking, harassment, GPS trackers being put on vehicles. Can we address all that? And
Well, there was never a
what it
GPS
think?
tracker placed on a vehicle ever. That was inferred by the state, but it was never done. In fact, they actually presented that the GPS tracker that was purchased was still brand new in the box, never used, never utilized. That was absolutely a fabrication by the prosecution. No GPS tracker was ever placed on a vehicle. Period. Was not done. So was there a GPS tracker purchased? Yep. But my brother and I had spoken because he helped me with my business. I had a construction remodeling business at the time. He had spoken with me at length about putting trackers on the work vehicles. My work van, my contractor van, and if he was using his van, that he would put a tracker on that as well. If we're going to be letting people use the vehicles, that unfortunately the state had twisted that into him using it only for the purpose of watching Sadie. Unfortunately, it was bad timing that he had looked at and purchased this device, but this was a conversation that he and I had specifically had in months leading up to this situation, was how to free up a little bit more of my time, because at the time I was working 12 to 16 hours a day. I was at the job site all day. I was training I had two employees. I was training my guys. I was there holding their hand, making sure they were doing the job right. I was also bidding jobs and doing all this other paperwork. And then I would buy materials and do everything else. So I wanted to be able to train my guys up well enough where I could take my contractor van and give that to one of my guys. But then there's the issue of, are they driving it for their own personal work? Are they doing all those other things? And that conversation was also part of the debate on whether or not to let my guys work as a crew to just drive my vehicle around. It was an important aspect of moving forward with the business. So long term, that was an issue to bring up. And related to the business, there were these income properties that my brother had purchased, that were bought off a sheriff's sale. He had three different properties that he had purchased. He had two of them active at the time. He was looking to buy another one off a sheriff's sale, and he and I had spoken about a property. I can't tell you the address of it, but I'm sure that in the evidence presented in or that is in the discovery, that they have all the searches of the sheriff's sales that were going to be active on all these properties. He had taken money out of his settlement with AT&T, out of his retirement account, effectively. Had taken it and was getting ready to go buy another property out for sheriff's sale. And if you're unfamiliar with that, sheriff's sale is a foreclosure auction where you can go and you can bid on properties. So they go and they sell off foreclosures at auction to try and cover the liens on the property, and then you gain control of the property. You have to go in, you get it as is, you have to fix it up and do a bunch of work on it. So there were talks about keeping a property that needed to be worked on as a backup for my crew if we ran out of work or anything like that, if bids had come up dry. And there were talks about a specific property that had a really good return on investment, was in a decent enough neighborhood to get a good rent and things like that, that he was highly interested and motivated to go get. He did not get the property at the auction, but it was something that we had talked about very specifically. So the state alleged that the $50,000 that he pulled out of his account was, one, they claimed that it was drug money and it was seized by the Fed because I guess my brother's lawyers didn't file the right paperwork. But the reality was that it came out of his retirement account. He pulled it out of his investments. He withdrew it out of the bank specifically to use for that type of currency, to use for these investment.
When
Um,
was that done?
I would have to look at the receipt. It was presented in the court, but it was in the month prior to, I think it
So
was in April.
2020.
Yeah, it was in 2020.
Okay.
It was like right before this all occurred. He had $47,000 in cash that they had seized, and they presented that like it
How
was his
about his
getaway money.
other purchases? You said he did a couple other fire. I'm saying fire
Those were
sales, but
all,
sorry.
yeah, those were all previous. So I had done work on those properties
And he
4 years before that, 5 years before that, something like that.
and he had invested in those as well.
Yeah,
Same
yeah, he had
principle.
renters in them.
Okay.
And
Okay.
he
So you
rented
have
them out
a
below
track
market
record.
value to people that were in a bad way financially. One of them was Sadie's brother. He had a let's see, it was a 2-bedroom condo in uh, in Milwaukee that he had rented out to Sadie's brother to help him out when child support had his income knocked to a level where he was struggling to afford enough space for his family. So situations like that where my brother was not a bad person. Did he do everything right? No, but went out of his way to help people that needed it. He always did. People that needed a leg up. Stephen Lenz, that guy that they had mentioned him in the courtroom, that guy, he struggled to find job or maintain employment. He had some issues, emotionally, psychologically, and things like that he had to try and work through, and some other issues that kind of hung over his head. My brother tried to get him away from that type of life, and help him recenter himself, and help him, give him a path forward. And like, it it didn't work. He lived in Zach's trailer for a short time, and then ended up moving back in with his dad, I think. But the reality was that he had a huge heart, and he tried to help people that really needed it.
Now, when did he and Sadie actually stop living together?
And that
Um,
was 2011 when he bought his house. He bought the house with enough space for the whole family, but yeah, they had enough friction living together in a confined space that she moved into a different location, and then they just lived separately. He was also traveling and stuff like that. My brother's a very, like, particular type of person. He sleeps very light, and so he's got a, like, kind of an irregular sleep schedule. So sometimes he'd just be awake in the middle of the night. And I lived with him for a short period, and he would wake up with literally the sound of a mouse in the house. He would wake up with the scratching of a mouse. So
okay, so then from 2011 to 2019 or so, then they were in what,
in a
friends with
relationship,
benefits or
in a
not?
relationship, but living separately.
Okay. And what was the impetus in 2019 that said, okay, it just can't go on? What's happening?
They
Why
had
they?
a disagreement. It was preparation for the twins' birthday party. Their birthday is on Christmas Eve, and I guess there was some sort of disagreement, and Sadie had swung a broom at my brother and then tripped over some Christmas decorations, and then called the cops on him. And my dad watched her swing the broom, and it was kind of a problem, because they arrested my brother when she went after him physically, and he was really frustrated about that situation. But they never charged him with anything. But they separated him, and they said, "Well, just don't go back." And then he had the ability to not spend, Christmas or the boy's birthday with them because of it, and it was
How long
not
was he
good.
locked up?
Well, it basically told him not to go back, that
Okay.
day, effectively. So he wasn't allowed to go to the celebration, on for the twins, or for Christmas proper. And it just he just said, "Look, I'm gonna give her some space," and that space was like 3 weeks before they had texted, again, after that fight. That was, I think, late January or something like that before they started texting again.
Does the police report reflect that she was the aggressor in the situation?
I haven't been able to get the police report, so I would love to see it. But my dad was there and he witnessed her swing the broom at him. He said once he witnessed her swing. But I don't know. I'd have to get his consent, I believe, to the forms that they've presented to get the police report from their records keeper. That was the form that I saw when we were looking for it. Maybe that was Mequon. I don't recall. I'd have to look again.
Okay, so now that was, I think you've mentioned two incidents where she called the police on him. Is
Yeah,
there
that's
more?
what I told you that this was a situation where she was trying to weaponize the police. She was calling the
Hmm.
cops on him, even if he didn't do anything, even if she aggressed at him, it was a situation where she was building a paper trail, and that was something that was presented in the courtroom. What she said to Rosalio in text messages was that I am building a case. I am recording things. Right. So she did have that as motive, and it was very, very clear. She admitted it in that text message to Rosalio that she was trying to establish a paper trail to take my brother to family court. It was very clear.
Okay, so Rosalio Gutierrez Jr. Um, when did he enter the picture, and when did you learn of him yourself specifically?
Uh, the first I had heard about Mr. Gutierrez was in, I think, one comment from my brother. I think that was May. I think it was May by the time that occurred. Maybe it was late April. But one comment, and he had just said that the guy had some kind of history with drugs, and that it was unfortunate that Sadie didn't have better judgment bringing someone with that kind of history. There was like a domestic violence, charge and some history with drugs, and that Sadie he was just disappointed that she didn't have better judgment in whom she was bringing into the children's lives. I mean, just so we have the proper tone, it wasn't, he wasn't feverish about it. It was just like that's really, really unfortunate that she's dating this guy of all people that seems to not have a good criminal history.
Right now, I'm going to ask because it could lead into the question. I mean, if the guy has a pretty bad record, and those are your children, um, I don't want to imagine he was too cavalier with it either. If he's concerned now, could some of the quote stalking have come out of that a real concern about who's around his
Absolutely.
children?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the only reason why he would have looked up Gutierrez at all, to look up who he is and whom Sadie is bringing around the children. His primary concern was trying to protect the children. There was a family situation that had disseminated immediately following my niece's birthday that meant that the two of them were spending almost every day together. But the reality was that it only occurred because nobody was around my niece enough to make sure that she was using her devices appropriately to put proper parental guidelines and restrictions on the smart devices and things like that. So she was using social media in ways that a child doesn't completely comprehend. That she thought she knew what she was getting out of it, but the reality was that she wasn't using it, and wasn't restricted the way a child really needs to be protected from the potential evils that exist in our world. From that issue, there was good reason for my brother to be even more concerned with the kids' safety, more concerned with what was happening in the household. And after that, I believe was when he had told her specifically that he was going to go to court, for custody of the kids, because it just wasn't, the living situation that they had didn't appear to be the best for the kids, and he wanted to have some of that time to get them out of that environment, to have them, in his home.
Okay, so now, back to the stalking claims. Was he checking in, um, many times and it could be seen as excessively from her end? What led to it? I've already covered the GPS tracker, that's done. What led into it? Because again, every headline, everything I see, stock, 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 and now I hear that where there could be a reason for it, but what exactly was going on here? Was
She
he
claims that he was harassing her nonstop and all this stuff. They tried to present this situation in the courtroom where she went to Mexico for like a week or 10 days in early March. And during that time, her friend Rebecca was watching the children, but she never told my brother about it. He had no idea that she was going to Mexico. And if you're familiar, the right of first refusal really should go to the father of the children for taking care of the children if she's out of the country for a lot of reasons. And in this situation, is like I said, this is a buildup of of again her trying to manipulate my brother into doing something. This is a situation where he showed up when he found out that she was in Mexico, showed up at the house to figure out what was going on, and to get his children up, to get them ready for school. They said that it was at some ungodly early hour, but he was trying to make them like pancakes and all kinds of stuff for breakfast and start their day out in a way that was positive and productive, and to do something in a good way for the children. He was not aggressive in that situation. He even smiled and said good morning to Rebecca, whom he didn't have a great relationship with. So that was testified to in the courtroom. And then Rebecca escalated with Sadie to call the police that my brother was in the home. But my brother had been doing his laundry in Sadie's house the whole time. So how is this a situation? They tried to spin it in a way that made it sound like my brother just broke into her home to then take care of the kids, but he had never really not been welcome in the home, because he was welcome there to spend time with the children, and to like do his laundry and things like that. Even if he and Sadie weren't actually together, he was still welcome there for the sake of their kids. So this is just a complete fabrication, a misrepresentation of the reality of it. And they tried to skirt around the idea that he was allowed in the house, saying that, well, Sadie had testified that he was not allowed in the house. No, not at all. But then there's text messages that she had sent him, like, "Why didn't you spend the night?" And asked him, or said goodnight to him, said good night, Z Bear XOXO. And this is all during the time period that they claimed that he was stalking her, he was harassing her. They never presented any evidence during the trial. They had all of her phone records, all of his phone records. They had no evidence of her saying, "We're not together. Don't contact me unless it's for the kids. Please don't contact me in these circumstances." That was never actually said. They never presented it. It's really, really important that not only we recognize that there's this massive miscommunication and a misrepresentation of fact by Ms. Beecham, but the reality is that then she leads him on. She still tells him that she loves him. She still sends him XOXO with his pet name. She still invites him over for Panda Express. And then she's communicating with Mr. Gutierrez and says, if you am I allowed to swear on this? Are you okay with that?
sure? Go ahead.
It's a quote. If you fuck with me, I'll fuck with you back. Like that. That's not that's not someone that's terrified or under severe emotional distress. I believe that all of those things pieced together very strongly argue against stalking. Could you argue that he harassed her? Sure. Absolutely. But they had her on the stand. She testified to this like fuzzy blue window, this bluish window that could have been any window, of it being absolutely her window in this video recording of him walking around at night. And she said, "Well, that's my window." And how do you know that that's your window? It's one bluish hued window in the middle of the night. It could have been any number of windows. You don't know that that was her window. So
And what
there's
was he recording? What was he recording?
just walking with I believe the recording on the phone. And I don't
What?
know if that was. I mean, I can theorize that maybe it was just in case someone walked out and confronted him, that it was for his own preservation. So he had any argument or anything that ensued recorded. I have no idea, but
So it probably was her window then. I mean, if he
Maybe
was recording to prevent it, I'm just saying that would.
and so do, did he go over there? Okay, so so let's just start with the basis that he went over there one night. Did he take pictures of her doing anything? No, there's no evidence of that. Did he harass her? Did he confront her? No, there's no evidence of that. They claim that he went through Mr. Gutierrez's vehicle. Do they have evidence of that? No, they never presented that he had gone through it, other than my niece's testimony that he went into the guy's glove box. But then they later present that there's a Google search for looking up how to the owner of a Colorado license plate. Well, if he went and looked at the title, the registration, or whatever it was, the registration and the insurance, then why did he have to Google the like how to find the owner of a Colorado plate
Did the Google search occur before or
after?
after?
So there was a so
Okay.
Gutierrez drove a truck with a Colorado plate. It was owned by Eugene
Mhm,
and Celia Patterson. That's Rosalio's parents. In with that, they
mhm.
had given him a letter which outlined that he was allowed to drive this vehicle even out of state, et cetera, signed by them. It was one of the pieces of evidence that they presented in the courtroom. So there's a logical disconnect, right? In looking at what transpired. So he went over to the house. Fine. He went over to the house in the early morning hours of the 25th. Was it responsible? No. Was it the right decision to make? No. But does that mean that what he did was stalking? No, it doesn't. So because stalking, there's an element of control and the intent to elicit a physical contact, right? So the Wisconsin state statute defines it as two acts that create severe emotional distress, fear of imminent death, or an overwhelming sense of fear or dread. Were any of those fulfilled with that act? No, none of those were fulfilled with that act. Confusion? Maybe. With the doorbell being rung? Did he ring the doorbell? I have no idea. That could have been another lie told. That's really hard to differentiate. I'm not sure. So the claiming that the doorbell was rung after they had testified to the fact that my brother had told my niece to cover her nose and mouth so she didn't fog up the glass. Well, if you're going through that level of deceptive behavior, that level of planning where you're trying to make sure that nobody notices the fog on the glass, why would you ring the doorbell and drive away? That doesn't make sense. Logically does not make sense why you would do both of those things in the same trip.
And this is April 24th, 25th
It
timeframe?
was yeah, late April 24th to early morning on like early morning. So like 11 midnight whatever time on the 24th into the 25th. And part of it was that my niece was upset with my brother because he was dating another person, so she was really mad at him. So it was a little girl trying to figure out why her parents aren't together. This is someone that is hurt and trying to
Mhm.
emotionally deal with the situation. Like I said, harassment, you could argue harassment, but that's not what the charge was. The charge was stalking. So one of the other things that they argued was the phone in under the car seat. But why would you have texted the person that you planted the phone on, asking them if they had
What
seen the
what
phone?
what was the exact what was the specific argument they made about the phone?
They said that they alleged that my brother had specifically planted this smartphone, a Motorola G6, underneath one of the twins' booster seats in the back of Sadie's vehicle. That he had done that very specifically in the back of the vehicle. But with the family situation that had occurred, my niece had gone out of her way to start taking like old cell phones. Had done that with my younger sister. Had taken one of her cell phones, and so there were some issues. This was again related to the issues that had occurred where it was not very well monitored. Some online activity that she was doing.
Whose phone was it?
The G6 was my brother's phone.
Okay, his primary phone?
No, well, I mean he had two phones. He had the smartphone and then the flip phone.
Why did he have the two phones? One for
because
work, one for.
I mean, sort of, yeah. He liked to use his flip phone, but flip phones don't have like GPS and a lot of other things. So he got a smartphone so he could have that. But he also, understanding telephone technology, understands that these devices can listen to anything that's occurring or transpiring, and those logs are kept, like,
Mhm.
that these things are listening to everything that are happening in our home. So my brother didn't like smartphones. He really didn't like them. So he specifically sequestered them. He didn't want them around. He was very anti-smartphone.
Without getting into, details, obviously, privacy concerns or whatever, was your niece, I guess the term would be, grounded from using her phone at
Yes,
the time, or had her phone taken
yes,
away from her?
yes.
And are you saying, and again, I'm not saying it's a definitive claim, is it your opinion that she could have got his phone in order to
Gain access.
resume whatever activity she is doing online, and
100%.
then maybe threw it under the back seat if she was almost caught
Yep.
with the phone? Fair enough. But now this is leading us up to Rosalio apparently disappeared May 17th.
The phone plant had happened. I used that, the plant, right? Had happened a little over a week before Rosalio had disappeared, and and then the weekend before, uh, Zach had the kids. So on the weekend of the disappearance, so Zach had the three kids, and and he got them. I want to say on Saturday, um, because on Friday night he had a bonfire with Andrew, who testified, and then my cousin Alex was there at the bonfire, I believe.
That was the 16th,
That was
in
on
the
the
night before.
15th. The
15th, a
15th.
Friday night.
Friday night the 15th. So there was a
Okay.
bonfire on a good bonfire on Friday night the 15th.
Hmm.
And then on Saturday morning he drove my friend Andrew home. And that was, they questioned Andrew about that trip home because Andrew had slept at my brother's house that night. They had a few drinks and he crashed in one of the kids' beds. And then the following morning Zach drove him home. And then Zach got the kids that day, spent the day with them, and then the following Sunday with them, he went out to the Christmas tree farm, where the kids spent a bunch of time with my sister, and my brother was helping my eldest brother plant some trees and do stuff like that, and my dad was there. So how Sadie
Okay.
had gone over to Rosalio's on Saturday the 16th and was there until what she had testified to almost midnight. So she was there. It was the first time she had met Rosalio's children, and it was maybe the fifth, sixth time that she had met Rosalio in person, starting from when they had first started talking on February the 13th of that year. So between February 13th and May 16th, they had kids, they're busy people, COVID hit, there was some issues in making time to actually spend time in person together. She went to Mexico for 10 days. They had just gotten to know each other. They had met once in person in February. So that's what she had stated. And she had met him once in person in the beginning of March. So that was the second time she had met him in person.
Hmm.
And then after that, she went to Mexico for like, a week or 10 days or whatever it was. And then got back. So out
How
of
did
that
she
time
meet him?
period, Facebook dating.
Okay.
So found him on Facebook dating. So on February the 13th, they made a connection. They started messaging, and from there, they had spoken very regularly.
Did he live with his children?
No,
Okay.
no, his children live primarily with their mothers, because each of them is from a different baby mama. But in that situation, she was there until almost midnight, give or take, and then Michael Campbell came over a little after midnight, and he was there for several hours in the middle of the night. So whatever had transpired, Michael was there after Sadie had left, to my
Who's
understanding.
Michael?
Michael Campbell is one of Rosalio's good friends. Uh,
Mhm.
so I believe that's on the night of the 17th.
Hmm.
So you have a
So
guy.
now, Mike Campbell, I just want to clarify,
Yeah.
um, showed up after midnight?
After midnight, yeah. On
Okay.
the
What
on
time
the
do the
early
bars close?
morning, on a Saturday, 2:30.
Okay, so could it be that, like, coming home from the bar, just coming by there?
Yeah, yeah, it could have been
Well,
that. I'm not sure what time exactly he got there, but he was there, pretty late, and he stayed for a couple hours and talked or something like that, according to phone GPS data. I believe that's what
hmm,
they had shown. So Michael Campbell was there at some point in the early morning hours of the 17th. Uh, so that's after Sadie left. On the 16th, Campbell shows
mhm,
up and they spent some time together. Um, Now, Sadie says that she hung out with the kids. At some point, the kids went to bed. They chatted for a little bit. He had made nachos, something like that, and they had spent some time together. And she was just overwhelmed with joy that she had the opportunity to meet his children. She
mhm,
had texted him on at some point during the day on the 17th and said something along the lines of, "I think I want you to be my person for a while," which is, if you're
mhm.
unfamiliar, I believe I was told that it was a Grey's Anatomy reference, to like
Oh,
being exclusive, something like that.
hmm,
Like wanting to date him, right? So she conveyed that she wanted to lock it down, be a little more to lock down an exclusive relationship. Uh, to which he like hearted, like he liked it, not the thumbs up, but like the heart. He
mhm.
hearted the message, and then carried on with his day. It's not like he confirmed that or anything like that, and I describe it as like, I mean, I think, oh, what was the term? It's called like dry texting, uh,
Hmm.
where it's like a super non-committal thing. It's effectively a fist bump.
Was that the
Um,
last communication between the 2?
no, the last communication was that he was going to Mike's for a while, and
Okay.
that he wouldn't be available. But that was in the evening of the 17th, um, in which the reality was he had invited this woman, Nettie, over. So um, that was the girl that was in the wrong location, where Nettie was coming over, and Narita Macias is her name, if you're looking her up in the witness list. Narita Macias was coming over. She had texted at like, I think it was about 8:25 that she was on her way, and then she said 5 minutes away at like 9:30 or something like that. Uh, she lived about 40 minutes away, so she says she's on her way, shows up like 40-45 minutes late, and then he doesn't respond. But up to that point, they had exchanged some texts about what she liked to drink, and things like that. And she had testified to the fact that she was going over there just to talk or get to know him. She wasn't going into his home. They were gonna like drive around or walk around or whatever it was that night.
So
That
she never saw him then?
she never saw him. That's what she testified to, at least. So, um, because the cop said, well, she was believable, so they didn't bother looking into her as a potential suspect, even though she
Hmm,
was specifically the person that was supposed to be at the crime scene, according to her text messages and her interactions with him, that was supposed to be there during the alleged time of his disappearance. They never bothered investigating her. They never bothered even trying to figure out if she was in the crime scene at all, to figure out if she was lying, because they just said she seems believable. Well, then she met with the attorney, the district attorney Michael Gravely, right before the trial, the mistrial in 2022, and then changed her testimony, because he then went with her to the crime scene, and she drove and parked in the wrong place. And then he said, well, she was outside the wrong building. She couldn't have possibly have seen whether or not someone was going in and out, or anything that might have transpired that night. Um,
hmm,
which is sort of an odd thing that you would bring her back, 2 years
mhm,
later, or just shy of 2 years later, to try and clarify her testimony. This is sort of an odd consistency that the ADA, the
hmm.
DA, and then the lead detective meet with people, and then suddenly we have a prison snitch, testimony that's never recorded, that they just write down what he says. They never put it on body camera. They never actually videotape it at all, which is suspicious in nature, that these same people are meeting with these people, and suddenly their testimonies change.
Did they have any other suspects that were ever named?
From what I understand, they did look at Michael Campbell, but I don't know if the police did a really deep dive into him. They couldn't bring Michael Campbell in as a Denny, a Denny motion, which I'm not sure why he would do that, because there
What
was
is that?
a
I'm not
Denny motion
aware.
is specifically a Wisconsin law that's based on, I think, 1984, the state of Wisconsin versus Denny, that establishes an a potential other actor in a crime like this, where you have to specifically outline someone's motive, opportunity, and means to commit the crime. And so they presented those three things for Michael Campbell. There was motive potentially. I believe that there was money that was owed between the two of them.
Okay. Now, when did you first learn of the disappearance?
I heard that my brother was arrested the night that he was arrested, so on the 19th. So I was in contact with my brother and my dad about that, but I was in a meeting at the time, so I couldn't do anything about it. I was meeting a potential client and discussing a project, but I followed up afterwards, and nobody was answering their phone. So I got wind of what was potentially happening. I think from Josh that night when he was released from the police station after questioning.
Okay, so at that point, he was just being questioned as a potential witness slash suspect, but not
So they
arrested.
they arrested him. They arrested him for
Okay.
stalking that night.
Oh, for
That's how they got the
stalking.
search warrant. Yeah.
Okay.
So the on the day of the 19th. Now I just skipped over a bunch of stuff in the
Mhm.
time, like in this timeline, because there's some issues there with some of the witness testimony of what happened. This is a bunch of information that came in. Neighbors that heard some thumping around 10 p.m. On the night of the 17th in the living room area. That was the neighbor that lived above Gutierrez. So you have a neighbor that testifies to have heard a thumping noise at around 10 p.m. About five thumps, loud thumps. It sounded like something being banged against the wall in the apartment, or in the living room area of the apartment on the night of the 17th. You also have one of the neighbors that heard arguing between a man and a woman in Gutierrez's apartment on the night of on the afternoon, or around 1 p.m. or something like that, on the 18th.
Hmm.
Now that testimony was also changed 2 years later. So then there's a stipulation read in the courtroom that said, "Oh, well, I must have been thinking about the 17th."
Hmm.
You also have an anonymous tip that stated that there was a brown-haired woman on Gutierrez's patio at 4:16 p.m. on the afternoon of the 18th. Uh, so you have, some witness testimony that claims that there was something happening in the apartment on the 18th, both this argument between a man and woman, and a woman standing on the patio. Then after that, now speaks to the potential of someone being there on the 18th. What we saw, and what was tested, I believe, by the attorneys, was that the diffuser on one of the tables near the door was still going during the crime scene photographs on the 19th at like 1 p.m. Now that
What's a
implies that
diffuser? I'm sorry.
a diffuser is like a aromatherapy, where you put like essential
Okay.
oils and water in it, and then it
Right.
steams into the room and
Okay.
creates, moisture if you get bloody noses, and
Hmm.
then like aromatherapy with like lavender and things like that to help you relax, or it's like burning incense, but
Hmm.
not burning. So they, because the prosecutor alleges that the murder had taken place at about 10 p.m. the night of the 17th, and
Hmm.
this diffuser is still going strong at noon, maybe 1 p.m. On the early afternoon of the 19th. Now that's almost 40 hours later.
Hmm.
So this diffuser is still going that following day, and it's very, very possible that this diffuser was loaded to and set up to cover the smell of the blood or whatever else had happened in that apartment on the 18th.
Where was your
So
brother on the 18th?
my brother was working. He went to do
Mhm.
his taxes, and then he spent the rest of the evening with his girlfriend Christine.
So the
Because
time is very important here.
I should get into the other part of the timeline from the 17th as well,
Mhm.
because the state had presented that my brother had taken a nap, right? But the state alleged that he didn't take a nap, and that he had taken the time to drive to Kenosha to then wait outside Rosalio's apartment until he got home, and then to ambush him at the door and to beat him to death with a blunt force trauma, and to finish him off with some sharp implement, right? Like was Inspector Gadget pulling out a different device, and so that's what they alleged happened at about 10 p.m., right? To follow the timeline established with that time window. The problem is that Kenosha is over an hour away from my brother's home. My brother was at home at 11:19 p.m., texting and calling Christine, his girlfriend, at 11:19 p.m. That they said that they could not find any video surveillance footage of him, and this is why they said that it was so carefully planned out, is because it was executed in such a timely manner, and that he was able to avoid all these cameras because they never found any evidence. So they tried to
Could you do
explain,
that?
no, not no. There's like I think one of our group members counted traffic cams on the freeway between Mequon and Kenosha, and they had counted somewhere around 30 traffic cameras between
Are there
those two
alternate
locations.
routes?
There are alternate routes, but you would have had to take an hour and a half, hour and 45,
Mhm.
way longer to get around, and still, even to get close to that time frame, you'd have to drive through a different freeway interchange with more traffic cameras. There's no way for you to make this timeline work to drive from Kenosha to Mequon to make this timeline that they presented without being seen on traffic cameras.
Could he use another vehicle?
No, they alleged that he had the minivan because the carpet was missing.
Okay. And what about his phone? Was his phone pinging a tower anywhere near there around that time?
Nope. His phone stayed in Mequon. The state said that he had already memorized the path down there, and he left his phone at home on purpose.
How about everybody else? You've brought the name up of Mike Campbell multiple times.
hmm
Um, do you know where he was that evening?
Well, Erica Saylor testified that he was at home in bed. As
Okay.
it turns out, Erica Saylor is a brunette woman.
Hmm. I've come to a conclusion. Would you be up for coming back and answering questions that can come in from a live chat, which
Yeah.
may be critical, but I'm very interested in what's going on here. It sounds like Mike Campbell, you feel, should be investigated more. I'm not going to state anything beyond that point, but there
Yeah.
are questions between different timelines and things like that that I really want to put it out to everyone here. Please comment below your thoughts about the different timelines. I'm sure that you're deeply knowledgeable of the trial and things like that, more so than I am. And I'd love to have you back again. And let's just, I guess, take incoming and see what happens, because I think people probably will want to challenge you. I think your story is very compelling, however, and I definitely want to hear more.
Yeah, I'm absolutely willing to.